Welcome. This is Dr. John DeMartini. This is one of the most amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
Hey, everybody, I want to welcome you to the Dr. Pat Show. We are live this morning, both on Transformation Talk Radio, the Transformation Network, and KKNW AM 1150 out of where? Seattle, but actually Bellevue. And I need to give a shout out to Benny. Hello, Mr. Benny.
Hey, Pat.
Now, I give a shout out to Jessica, but I don't know if Jessica can talk or not.
I can always talk.
Oh, there she is. Okay.
Good morning.
So we got the J and the B here, or better known as BJ. And so what we're doing here today is we are back in the saddle at our 7 a.m. slot on this AM FM station for a lot of reasons. And today's show, you're going to hear one of those reasons or several of them. You know, what if it is you ever wonder? I remember, Benny, the first time I walked into the studio, and I think, Benny, you remember this. Walked into the studio and I'm just starting out, and here I've got like 5 giant binders. And I've got these binders full of information because I thought, man, I got to have a lot of information to do these shows. I've got to study people. I've got to read them. So I would haul this information into the KKNW studios. Now, you have to remember, y'all, this is like you're going back 2003 and 4 now. So
I did the math, Pat. We're around 7,600 days ago. Yeah, that was over. I know, right? I got tired thinking about it too.
You made me tired.
Put the math all together.
Here, let me make you even more tired. You ready?
All right.
Somebody pointed this out to me, and I haven't fact checked it. But they said, do you know, Pat, if you keep the pace you're out at with doing episodes, around July 4th, you'll hit your 10,000th episode. And I went like,
does that mean party time? Woo! Getting it started early. I'm sorry. Too soon.
Yeah, it does. Okay. Now, I think, you know, what I think about is, okay, how in the world are you keeping count of how many episodes I'm doing?
Someone has to.
It's a listener. It was a listener. And I, you know, she who shall not be named today. But part of it all fits into a divine plan. And, you know, Benny and I and Jessica now, who helped launch the network in my basement apartment, I'm just saying, you know, dark basement apartment, no air conditioning, no heat. Jessica, Heather, coming in there as an intern, and then fast forward to where we are. But today, my guest, my fabulous friend, Bryn Blankinship, will explain the connections. And so sometimes in life, we hit a point, and this is what happened to me a couple of months ago. I hit a point where things were not making sense. Well, one of our loyal listeners for 20 plus years was counting the episodes. A lot of things started to not make sense to me. And so I just happened to mention to Bryn one day in a show, I've never done a past life regression. And Benny, can you imagine that? 20-something years and have not done a past life regression.
Oh, it's physically impossible.
It's physically impossible. But it's the kind of thing you do with somebody you trust. And I think that this is what today's show is about. You know, for those of you that are familiar with Bryn and those of you not, you know, award-winning certified master hypnotherapist, international instructor, author, specializes in a field that I wish I could have studied, transpersonal hypnoregression and clinical hypnosis. This is all about personal growth, but it's at the deep multi-layer. So Bryn was working in the multiverse before somebody came up with the term multiverse. Just saying, Benny, just want to make the record clear. And so what does that mean? When you discover the power of hypnosis, you will be amazed at what gets revealed to you. But your level of awakening, or shall I say discomfort in my case, led me to a place where out of my mouth came that. And Bryn said, yeah, love to do a session with you. And we planned it out and we laid it out. And I went into it, as I always do, a bit skeptical. And what you're about to hear today is what that process was like. And for me, you're going to hear more about where I am today. But if you take a look at Bryn, you're going to find her amazing book, and we're going to talk about that. But more than that, she has started an institute where she is now training other people. Some of our other hosts, I think it was Doc Martin. Some of our other hosts have been trained, Doc Martin, right, Bryn? Yeah. Some of our other hosts have been trained by Bryn. And so this is where you have a calling and it seems enormously big. And then somehow you find a way to walk the path, but your life gives you devastating life events. And you'll hear about some of that today. But the question really is, how do you use this information not to cave in, not to throw the towel in, but to keep moving on track despite what things look like? Bryn, thank you so much for today. And thank you so much for helping me with a new level of awareness, which I'm still making sense of. But more importantly, I want to thank you for doing what you're doing in the world. And today is really to talk about the process as well as what we discovered, isn't it?
Yes. Because, first of all, thank you for trusting me to do a session, because I'm guiding you to that space and then you're allowing yourself to open up to get into that space. Right? So I can lead you there, but you have to do the process to get in, to get the information. And people come to me for sessions when they're at a crossroads. They have questions. They want to understand why they're here. Like, what is the point of being here? Is it to have a house and have things and have a job? There's got to be more than that. Or what brings us together? What makes us connect? So I created SESR, which is Soul Expression Spiritual Regression. The acronym is SESR, and it's basically a current life assessment. SESR, the acronym, is an assessment so that you can have a current life assessment now and align even further with your soul's purpose. Because your soul is there. Your soul is guiding you, but sometimes our mind is out of sync. So we get headstrong and we go off in a direction. And if that happens, then it was meant to be. And, we learn lessons through that. But sometimes we could save ourselves a little bit of stress by taking the path that's more aligned with our soul earlier in life. But that's part of being here and learning. And then all of us coming back together, like at the right moment, meeting people from your past lives that are in your current life. So I would just like to start with, to do a SESR session, you have to do a past life session first. So, Dr. Pat said, haven't done one of those. I said, well, let's do that. But what happened was, and this happens a lot of times with clients who are preparing to do the SESR session, her past life session popped into SESR. Like, it already went into the more advanced. So we got some past life information, but then we went into the afterlife. And that's when it gets even more exciting. And I've been doing this work for 20 years. Over 20 years, actually. I get excited every single time I do a session, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love this because what I want to say about it is that, and you're right about my best friend here, who I've known for a long time. And I will tell you, her comment to me was, yeah, you better do something with Bryn, like kind of like that. But then the curiosity of, well, what just happened? What did you discover? And a lot of times it's like when I went on my vision quest, I couldn't describe it, but I had journals. So I simply read from my journal to people because I couldn't really describe what the experience was. And this is the same. And I want to ask you a question about this too. This is trying to figure out, how do you fit into the divine plan?
Yeah.
Or better yet, do I fit in the divine plan? Because part of the conversation really is, well, that's for Bryn, but I don't think I'm part of a divine plan. And isn't that really, where we go is, I was at a crossroads and I needed to understand some things in my life. Because when you say yes to a big vision or a big dream, it doesn't come without challenges and obstacles.
Exactly.
Right. But don't you think sometimes we take that and say, oh, that's meant for me to give it up? But that's not what's revealed, is it?
Exactly. So all souls are part of the divine plan. Everyone, no matter, the human mind might think them to be insignificant, but at a soul level, all are needed. Okay. And so clients will come into these sessions feeling insignificant in their lives and come out seeing, come on the other side of the session, seeing their place in this world and the importance of what they're doing. Whether, I had a past life, okay? And I was significant in being the person that opened the gate to let the really important person in to get in and do what they had to do back in a castle, right? So I was the gatekeeper and I held the latch. I lived my whole life so that I could have that job to open the gate, not knowing that was going to be why I had that job. But in hindsight of doing the session, we were able to explore that further, right? The rest of my life was just filler for that significant moment because that was an important time in history. So sometimes people feel insignificant, but everything that's ever happened to you is leading you to this place. For me, I've been in the client chair almost 100 times now. Okay. And I learned something new every single time. But I started out wanting to be an actress. Like, I had a legal job. I was a legal assistant. I had the traditional job, but I really wanted to be an actress. So I was studying that. And, my classmates were working full time. They were doing that full time, and I had the legal job. So it was a big step for me to step out of that and into an unstable job that gave me more flexibility so that I could go on auditions up and down the East Coast. Well, I had a past life session. Like Dr. Pat, my past life session turned into a future progression, and it showed me this prairie grass. And I'm standing in prairie grass, and I'm walking through an orchard, and I'm picking these apples off these trees. And these apples represented acting gigs. Like, I knew that in the session. So to me, it was metaphorical. And I was trying to get to New York. That's where I was going to go. I'd been up there, looked for apartments. In the next week or two, a friend from acting class that had moved to LA 5 years before called me up out of the blue. And we were not even that close back then, but we knew each other. And she said, Bryn, you should come out here and stay with me. You can stay on my couch for 3 weeks, but you'll do great. And I was like, but no, I'm going to New York. So everything lined up and fear set in.
Yeah.
Like, I had it all lined up to go. Fear set in. And my husband, he came home from work one day. He was a massage therapist. And he came in and said, look, I want to talk to you. He said, if you don't go, I'm going to leave you. I love you, but you're going to resent me if you don't take this opportunity. Now, I'm not going to go with you. I'm going to stay with our house that we had just, we had this house that we had gotten into a couple of years before. I just built my practice. But when there's a reason for me to come out there, I will. So you go and you check it out. And oh, by the way, I'm not going to ride with you either. This is a journey you have to take on your own.
Wow.
So then he goes, oh, I have to go back. He looked at his watch. Oh, I have to leave now. I have to go back to work. He left me with, you either take it or I'm leaving you.
Wow.
I mean, I was paralyzed with fear. So I packed everything up, put it into my little Honda Civic, drove out the next day to LA, met up with my friend, and then everything just fell into place. I was taking an acting class down the road. Within a year of that session, I'm standing in the Grapevine north of LA, and I had my Birkenstock sandals on, and one of the guys says, hey, I was standing with my trailer and had my name, my star, and my own little trailer. And I'm standing in that grass. And he says, hey, you better be careful because there's snakes in this grass. And I looked down at my shoes and looked up and saw like down the hill where we'd been filming and had a deja vu moment back into my session.
Wow.
Like it came full circle. And I knew in that moment, I want to be a past life regressionist. This is the work I want to do. But I kept acting and I did that for longer. And then I studied some out there. And then I decided I was going to come home and learn more when I got home. I would go to where they are. So I studied with Roger Wolger, Michael Newton, Henry Bolduc. I worked a lot with Michael Newton. I helped start the Newton Institute. I taught internationally for them. But my work, even from the beginning, kind of branched off into what has become Cesar. So I've got my own institute, the Hypnoregression Institute, where I train people. And, I start people from the ground up on their soul's journey and maybe save them a little trouble by getting there a little sooner, because I can give them all the steps from basic hypnosis all the way to the work that I'm doing, right? So, but it's so incredible. Every session is so unique, but mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is mind-blowing. And I want to talk to you about this because, for people that don't know what we're talking about, the biggest question that comes up is, and this is tricky, the biggest question that comes up is, what is the difference between Cesar and psychic reading? Now, before we go there, I want to thank you for sharing that story, because that story is my equivalent of saying, if I just could follow the breadcrumbs. See, this is my version of saying, yeah. And people have said to me, they're not breadcrumbs, they're your souls, Well, for me, they're breadcrumbs. I don't know. I have a very simplistic brain sometimes. And so following breadcrumbs makes sense to me. Who knows why? But you shared a story that led you to here today. And now, of course, you're going to have upcoming classes to train other people. And you know why this is important, Bryn? It's because what I'm discovering and really has helped me, what's the right word, since the session, really re-energize what it is that we're called to do.
Like a spiritual recharge.
A spiritual.
Right? And we're reconnecting. Your soul is there, but we're reconnecting you to your soul. And so one piece of that story I meant to mention is that in my session, my guide said, you're going to go out for one thing and come back with another. And I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be this actress, because I was already working. I just wanted to work more. And I really did work a lot when I was out there, a lot in the film industry, a lot with commercials, to the point where they called me by name. They called my agent and they knew who I was. So I did a lot of commercial work, but I did go out there for one thing and I came back with another. And I wasn't thinking about that session the whole time. I was doing what I had to do in that moment, right? But those were the breadcrumbs, and I built everything in that direction. If I had not taken that journey, all the efforts, the meditations, the manifesting, the acting training that I got, all the work, my agent, my headshot, all the things that I did to get me to that place would have imploded. And then my soul would have had to regroup and reorient, because the human component didn't follow through with the groundwork that had been laid. And so they would have had to move me in another direction, right?
Yeah.
And I rethink, if I look back at other things that I've done, those things that I did or that I didn't do were all pivotal in getting me to the place that I'm at.
Oh.
So that so many people will create an opportunity for themselves, and then right before it launches, they quit because they do meet those challenges and they meet the obstacles. But anything that's happening, your soul will guide you to the other side of it. But you have to get out of you can't be stubborn and stuck. You have to trust the process. You have to listen and follow that guidance. And so this session, the guides have explained that what they're doing is they are lowering their vibration, their energy, their frequency. And what I'm doing with clients is raising their vibration so we can communicate in the middle, and their soul is speaking more clearly through the client. So the way this is different than a psychic reading, the psychic is reading you, or they're reading their client, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the interpretation of the psychic. Well, I am guiding my client into that space, and then my client is reading themselves. Their guides are communicating through them, giving them the information. They are sharing it with me, and then I have the vision or the experience of all the sessions I've done. So if a client is meditating, they can get information from their guides too, and from their soul. But sometimes they're not getting all the information because it's coming through the filter of their own mind when they come out of it and start to interpret it. So I'm able to give you feedback. No, my guides are working with me when they're working with you in session, and they're poking at me. Ask this. And if I don't ask that question, it gets to be a bigger poke until it's like they always want to knock me over the head. Ask that question. And then I'll ask the question, and then a client will go, oh, okay. And that might be the piece that kind of pulls it together in a way that they hadn't considered before. So a psychic is reading their client. In Cessor, the client is reading themselves, and then they're sharing with me what they're getting. Yeah. And the point is to help you be in alignment with your soul's purpose, to find and follow that soul's guidance, and then you can keep that connection open following the session, right? So you're just more aware of those breadcrumbs, of those little bits that they're sharing with you. When you get the feeling that, oh, I should go this way and not that way. I was going to go down the highway and go down this road, and you're getting the feeling that maybe I should take this turn off, and you make the turn off and you run into someone at a shop that you stop at you weren't expecting to, and it's the perfect thing, and you were supposed to take the turn off, right? And maybe there was a traffic accident or obstruction if you'd taken the other path. So it turns out you did make the right choice, and then that gives you more trust in your intuition. Yeah. It's giving you those feelings. So, yeah.
This is really the key to it because, for those of you just tuning in, great show. This episode, we're talking about my soul's guidance. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to do, a little bit of deep diving into what this was like for me to go through this. And Bryn is here today. Bryn Blankinship is here today. For those of you that want to understand the process, because demystifying this is so important. And then also allowing to understand that this is really powerful beyond what you can imagine. It's the kind of experience that opens up doors that even while you're resisting, and which is me, and you're thinking this isn't working, then all of a sudden you say, wow, I've got this captain over here to the right of me, and he's on a ship, and your mind is telling you this isn't working. And then you realize something is happening where you're talking about something, you're seeing something, or you're feeling something, or whatever that, or you're saying something. And the soul is really guiding the process. So the question really is, for those of you out there, what gets revealed? How does it help you? And we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to go through that. We're going to go through parts of what was revealed to me. Alone, you're not going to be able to get there. But when you work with someone like Bryn, not only do you understand the questions, but what I found is even at some of the toughest moments in the session, the guidance and the kindness and the gentleness and the positivity walks you through some times in your life that you probably in the conscious world didn't remember. Bryn, we're going to take a break, but before we go, how do people find out about you? What's the best way? And of course, people are going to want to know when your next class is coming.
So you can find me at brynblankinship.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, Bryn Blankinship Author, Instagram, Bryn Blankinship Author, and we've got classes coming up in the fall. We haven't set the dates yet, but we do have a class coming up.
Yes. When we come back, we're going to take a deeper dive into some of the insights, what it's like for me to be in that client chair, what was revealed from Bryn's perspective, and what was the experience like for me, and how has it guided me to where I am today? But even more importantly, how does that guidance help you move beyond the limitations of your mind and the fierce, powerful drive of the ego to keep you small? Let's take a very short break, Benny and Jessica, and when we're back, fasten your seatbelt. Now, of course, if you want to send a question in, just call it 1-800-930-2819. Give that question to Benny, or we'll be able to take questions and answer them later on in the show for you. Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Dr. Pat Show. This is Talk Radio to Thrive By. And you know, y'all out there, you Coldplay people, remember when I was, playing around with that song, and I keep emailing you asking if I can bring that song back. I just want you to pay attention because I really want you to give me permission to do that. Why? You're going to hear why. Because we're going to go on a journey with Bryn about what is it like for me to be in the chair, so you can get an experience of what this meant for me and what it means for me today and how I'm still working through it. But before we do, Bryn, please tell everybody again, how do they get a copy of your book, which you got the cover right behind you? How do they work with you? How do they stay in touch?
So The Limitless Soul is available on Amazon, all major booksellers, and you can stay in touch you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram at brynblankinship.com, Bryn with a Y, Blankinship with an I. And then you can also sign up for my newsletter at the website. Facebook and Instagram actually is Bryn Blankinship Author, but we post a little more frequently there. So, this is exciting work. And I just want to comment on something that you said before the break. What is the point of finding out that you were on a ship in a past life? Like, how's that going to help me now? Right. Or, so what? Now I know this information about myself. What am I supposed to do with that? It's helping you to work through themes, work through karmic relationships. And, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that we are in an energetic period in our planet's history where we don't have to die, go through a life review at the end of the life, come back and be born. We can live multiple lifetimes in the same life, meaning that, a lot of different shifts are taking place. And so you are able to connect with your guides, and they can help you finish up and then start a new path in the same lifetime. And it might be like a career change, a family change, but however that manifests for you, help is available. Our guides are with us. Our soul is there with you. And we're using soul power versus brain power to repattern the client, right? The soul comes in and overrides and lifts us out of those ruts where the brain is trying to problem solve and it's into the minutia. The brain with the soul can move you forward leaps and bounds. And that's what we're talking about.
And let's talk about that, because I hit a point in time in my life this year where this became an option for me. And it's not like I sat down and thought about it. We were having a conversation and then out it came. But it came because what? The voices that you hear that say you need to do something like this to get to the next level, pretty much, that's really what goes on. Now, you and I talked about this. People have asked me, how did I get on this life path? What was in my soul to do? I got asked this 2 days ago. What was in my soul to have me take the path I'm on, to start the Transformation Network, to have a giant vision for it? And, I didn't have a great answer for that person. But I did speak from my heart to explain what I've learned in life is when something like this shows up, and it's meant for me to do, I really, really need to do it. Because in my life, when I haven't followed that pathway or haven't listened well, it was really ugly. And, what do I mean by that? Here's the short version, and then Bryn will explain what happened in the past life regression. In April, Benny was here, in April 1st of 2004, I had so much pressure from partner, family, friends, like, what are you doing? Why do you keep buying airtime? It doesn't make any sense. You just got this big fat degree. You could have had a big fat job at a major consulting firm, and I couldn't. My heart hurt so bad. And this was given to me. So what happened on April 1st of 2004? Bonnie Barnard and I are given a workshop, Live Your Greatest Dream. By the end of the workshop, my right ankle was the size of a very large grapefruit, just short of a soccer ball. And that led me on a path where I became unwell. Why? Because I was going to leave this path. And then the soul, the universe, whatever you want to call it, said, no, you're not. Now, that's my simplistic explanation, but I now look back at that, and it kept me in that state for 10 years. It moved until we launched Transformation Talk Radio. You see, that's what the deal was. It was continue to do this in a way that made sense to you, Pat. But now let's tie it back into the past life regression, because here we are, we're doing the session, and I'm not kidding. I think the first character or the first element I saw was a captain in a boat, standing like at the front of the boat, like they do. But that's only the beginning. From your perspective, I'd love to hear what you heard, what was revealed from where you sat, because you did ask some very powerful questions.
So at that point, you were trying to get acclimated into the life. And so pieces were coming through, and then your mind is going, well, wait a minute. What is that? I'm at the front of a boat. What am I doing? And I'm like, tell me more. Tell me, can you tell me about that? But then I started, as you got more settled into the scene, because again, we're lifting your energy and your guides are communicating, and, it's in sound bites sometimes, or in little glimpses of visions, and then it starts to roll, because you're leaving this plane that we're in right now to go to that other dimension. And it's like getting your toe in the other dimension and then pulling the rest of you in there so you can understand what's happening. So we had talked in pre-talk about some things that you wanted to work on. And then I'm trying to figure out, what does this have to do with the reason she's come in to have this session? Right. And I know you hadn't had a session before, but we had reasons that we wanted to explore, questions you wanted answers in the session. And your guides called for the session, right? They lined everything up for it to happen. So it's happening on a higher plane. So I'm thinking, okay, guides, what are we supposed to get from this? So as we move through more things, so Dr. Pat is what I call a skimmer. A skimmer jumps around to multiple lifetimes versus someone that just goes through one or two lifetimes and kind of goes through the whole thing. So we got bits and pieces. And I'm like, what is happening here? So we had the Pharaoh, we had the captain on the boat, we had someone in Atlantean times. We had someone that is a woman that was helping Jesus. Okay, let me just say, when Dr. Pat started talking about the lifetime of Jesus and how she was supporting behind the scenes, she was getting the word out. She was providing food and water for the masses of the people that came through. I'm thinking, well, she was a podcaster back then. So it's no wonder that you would be working in the field of communication again this time around. But there are themes that were threads that were going through each of those lifetimes that I was picking up on. So I started asking questions in that direction. And then we asked your guides to give us more information about that. And they were saying things like fighting for others, fighting for the rights of others, standing out, standing up for what is right, kind of putting yourself at risk. And then ultimately, there was also that lesson of love, learning to love yourself, right? By saying no to someone or something, you're saying yes to yourself through that process.
Yeah. I was fascinated about, I believe every scene had water in it. And that's what really shocked me when I went back and thought about it. I mean, even the parts where I must have sounded really kind of odd when I remember not being able to describe it well. And you kept asking me, and I said, no, I'm not there. I'm above. I'm looking down. And here's what I see. I'm looking down, and it was just my words. But I described something, and then you asked me other questions about it. Where are you? And I started to give you names of characters. I'm just going to call them characters for now, but give you names. And some of them, one in particular, I didn't know a single thing about, and it came out of my mouth. And it wasn't until after did I look it up. But in the scheme of things, there was a message throughout this. And what I was really seeking for now, looking back, what I was seeking for were signs for me of keep going forward. You're meant to do this. This is who's going to help with it, or how it's going to help, or this is who you need to become. And I think those things take time to process. But did you find that there was a theme that you saw? Or was it just really skimmer land?
No, but when that's happening, I'm looking for the theme, because we work on the same theme through multiple lifetimes, and we explore it from all sides. So sometimes you're the victim, sometimes you're the aggressor. Then you find that balance, but you're learning from each side of it, depending on like sometimes we learn in lifetimes. There's the warrior theme that came through. So it's good to be a warrior and stand up for what's right. But sometimes if we lose our cool, then we get killed, and maybe learn to temper it a little bit so that, we could live out more of the life and get more done instead of dying and then having to come back again. But that's the lesson, right? That's what we're learning through those multiple lifetimes. And I made a couple of notes. You were told to stop playing small and to rise above what's known in man's mind, and to trust the guidance. Trust the guidance that you've been given outside of the session as well as in the session, because they gave lots of insights. They helped do some healing energy. They were clearing limiting beliefs. There was a label that you've carried since childhood. And in one of those lifetimes, we went to, immediately you were talking about how you were able to read this code. You were able to see this code and read the code. And how that when you look at words, sometimes in current life, you see that code, right? Yeah. And it wiped away the label. They were saying there's nothing wrong with you. Do not hold on to that label any longer, because you see things this way because you're coming from this higher place of that lifetime where you were this being that was doing these things, and you're bringing those skill sets now. And the next time I saw you, on my podcast, when we were doing that show, you just look so different. You even mentioned that your ping pong game
Got
was
better.
like amazing, right?
Yeah.
Because it just takes the overthinking out of it and just puts you back into the moment, into yourself.
Yeah, I loved so much of what was discovered. And for those of you out there, it's a long session. And when you are done, you'll get a copy of it to listen to. But part of this is working with someone to get an interpretation, because Bryn sees this beautifully where I still may be blocked in this real world. Now, what Bryn, you were referencing is I grew up as being learning different. That's the term we used to use. Now we have a different term, a language here for people that are a little bit different. But one of the things that is very clear, I was different, but I was not less than. And that's very important. That difference, however, was, if you go in the diagnostic world, there's a big, fat, long name for what goes on in my brain. And yet it's not that. It's, imagine looking at a page of words and being able to scan that page and then have a complete image of what that page means. Now, what's the good news? It's great if you're doing concepts, building a conceptual network or a dissertation. What happens when it's not so great? Yeah, GRE exams, SAT exams, right? But in the world we're living in, there is a story and the theme. And I will tell you that what I was really struck by, and maybe I'd like you to talk to this, is the whole fighting for things, standing up for justice, the dilemma of that. I remember one character where I think I kept saying something like, they don't want to go. They don't want to go. They don't want to leave. I'm trying to help them leave. I'm trying to help them get freedom, but they don't want to go. And that is a contrast that I think showed up in many of the characters. The one character that was involved with Aphrodite, I didn't know anything about that character at all. I didn't know. And then I looked it up later. And this Aphrodite's love, this interesting dynamic of love and contention, it's fascinating when I think about my own life and how contentious some of the times were when I was in love and how unaccepted they were. And when I looked at Aphrodite's love and I thought about that, it was the same idea. But what is it we want to take away from this? Because in the world now, for me, I'm on this expansion. And since the regression, it's like, no, you can't play small. But now I'm like, please guide me. Show me a pathway, show me the tools, put me in front of the right people. And I think that's a conversation I don't think I would have had I not done the regression.
And it's helping you to recognize signs when those people show up and when the people that are not the right people show up, right? It just helps you to recognize. It's almost like it's a soul recognition. It's a light that kind of goes off inside of us because we recognize them, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about how, you came in during this time in history where you were here during the 60s. That was a social revolution. You're here now. There's another revolution that's taking place, right?
Yeah.
It's I've been around here too, and like we've been around holding energy and kind of paving the pathway for the ones that are coming through now and after us, right? But it's a huge shift that's taking place in our planet's history, and with the beings and with the people and the concepts. And that's when we incarnate. And, Dr. Pat and I, we had some lifetimes together too. It's no surprise. And a couple of other people that we know, a colleague, a friend of mine, a best friend. So these people, come in at these times, and we've met. Dr. Pat and I have met this colleague separately. I met her 24 years ago at a training. Right. You met her, and, and she's a friend today, but it's like we come together and then we go and do what we need to do, or we're off doing our thing and then we come together at those pivotal moments. So you can't not meet them, right? You're going to meet them when you're supposed to, even when you think, oh, I don't know why I'm taking this class. I don't know why I'm going to this place. Oh, let me just take a vacation and get away from here. I went to Bali back in September and met people from my husband's and my past life. I met several people and they recognized it at the same time that I did. These are some of the natives there. They're very open to past lives. You know, in the US, we're not so open, but, you know, it exists whether you're open to it or not. But when you can understand it better, then you can use those tools to move you forward in your life.
Well, I want to talk to something that is happening and has happened since. And I know we've got a few minutes left, but this is super important. Earlier in my life, I really was an advocate. I was a battler. My mom, Mama Doris, she would take us kids on these marches, right? She'd be like, here's a sign, let's go. We're going to do the march. And we just pack ourselves in a car and we go into Manhattan or something. We got our little signs and we'd show up. We're like 8, 9 years old. And we show up and we're marching with a group of people that were not the same. They didn't look like us. You know, we were marching with dark-skinned people that my mom had been raised by. And so here we were as kids immersed into this different kind of love. And, you know, the thing I want to say is what has happened since that, especially the energy of battling, and I don't know another better word, but I have taken on some battles. And I think the past life regression prepared me. For example, I've had 2 people, one of them blatantly steal a trademark. And I had to get ready to battle that. And then another, and this was a trademark on a word I made up. The second one, it looked like somebody that was in our focus group back in 2019 literally took that information and developed the app that we were focus grouping about. And so I had to take that on. But even more recently, I decided I'm going to take on the owner of the office building I'm in because I can't take it anymore. You know, we have tried to do things in a professional way, but now I put a line and draw it in the sand. And so sometimes that energy of mine will get me in trouble because the line I draw in the sand is a line you draw in the sand, but there are consequences. So you have to be prepared for them. And I am. And it's interesting because, you know, Linda's my best friend, of course. Jessica knows me since whatever, better than anybody, really, those two. And yet there's some things that I'm not willing to cave in on. The trademark's one of them. And having my people in office space that cannot be measured, doesn't have temperature control, and there are fumes coming out of the bathroom. Something happened to me where I drew a line in the sand and I said, no, we're not going to take this anymore. But for me, I'm like, I ain't paying you. And so there's a consequence to that. But I had to do it. I had to do something. It's been 3 years that we've been battling this, and I really didn't put that line in the sand. So you see what I'm trying to say? Something is happening for me to become more resilient, to have a more powerful voice, not just for me, but looking at the people that are coming into this office, and especially the women that go into that ladies' room. And, you know, poor Emily is in there with an electric blanket. And I'm like, I can't keep doing this. So that's part of, I think, the energy that got revealed to me. And yet there was this gap in my life where I just milk toasted. I just went through, I got to get promoted. I got to make money. I got to get promoted. And I think I sold part of my soul there.
Hopefully we got that back.
I think we got it back.
You know, because we're bringing those parts of you back to that have been, your energy gets dispersed sometimes, you know, like plugging into too many things into a plug. You know, you can wear out the battery if your soul is like the battery. And so unplugging some of those things, choosing where to spend your energy, choosing, I'm not going to fight with this anymore. I'm going to get people to come in and fight for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's when you draw the line and say, okay, I'm going to hire them and let them fight for that. You know, there's just some practical steps that you've chosen to take just because you've got your energy back, and not being scattered.
Yeah. And I want to say this one last thing. The level of creativity, and we joked about the ping pong, but that's no joke. If you would have seen me play the last time I played, people were in awe. I can't describe it from a physicality point of view, but it has more to do with an energy. But here's the thing I want to leave everybody with. The level of creativity that came to me after these trademark battles, we provided close to 100 exhibits for one of them. The second one, we were able to demonstrate I made the word up. And the third one, which is the most egregious, I looked at that. I got an attorney working with it. But out of that, I came up with a concept for a board game. Literally in 12 hours, mapped out a board game with 4 major realms and 12 minor realms. And, you know, Ascension being the middle castle. And when I think about that, I only have one explanation. Something opened up in me in that regression, and I wanted to thank you for that. Now, we're not done. There's more to be done here. Integrating all of this and learning how to watch it. So thank you, Bryn, for everything today. I know we've got to go. BrynBlankinship.com is the website. Get a copy of her book. Check out what she's doing. There are people that she works with that can help you. Bryn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right, for all of you, we're going to do more of this, but sometimes you need a little help, and that's what I needed. And you all are the best audience in the world. Thank you, Benny. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you, Bryn. We'll see you next time.